Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today, we're counting down 5 Toyota cars that were a complete disaster, and trust me, you do not want to miss this one. Number 5 is going to shock you, but number 4, that one's even more unbelievable. We're talking overheating engines, cars that couldn't climb a hill, and a vehicle so basic it didn't even have a heater. How does one of the world's biggest car brands get it so wrong? Before we jump in, if you're watching this from somewhere in Australia, drop your city in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Alright, let's get into it. Number 6, Toyota Sports 800, alright? Now this one is genuinely interesting because the Toyota Sports 800 was a bold idea. In 1965, Toyota decided to build their very first sports car, a proper two-seater, lightweight, low to the ground, designed to look fast and exciting. And look visually, it actually pulled it off. The Sports 800 had a clean, aerodynamic shape that still looks decent even today. Toyota engineers worked hard to keep the weight down, which is actually the right instinct for a sports car. Lighter cars handle better, accelerate faster, and stop quicker. There was just one problem: the engine. The Sports 800 ran on a 800cc engine. 800cc for a sports car that is extraordinarily small. It produced just 45 horsepower, which was barely enough to get the car moving at a decent pace on flat ground, let alone provide the kind of exciting, responsive performance that someone buying a sports car is actually looking for. On highways, the Sports 800 really struggled. At sustained high speeds, the tiny engine was working flat out just to maintain pace, leaving no reserve power for overtaking or climbing hills. Other cars on the motorway would simply pull away from it without trying. Parts availability was another headache. The Sports 800 was a niche, low-volume vehicle, which meant spare parts were hard to find and expensive when you did track them down. For most people, that made owning one a bit of a gamble. If something broke, you might be waiting a long time for the part to arrive. And practically speaking, the Sports 800 just wasn't very usable as a daily car. No real boot space, tight cabin, limited comfort over longer distances. It was a sports car without enough sport in it to justify the compromises. Despite all that, Toyota enthusiasts today actually love the Sports 800 as a piece of history. It showed that Toyota was willing to try new things, even if the first attempt didn't quite land. Number 5, 1937 Toyota Model AA. We're starting all the way back in 1937 with the Toyota Model AA, the very first car Toyota ever made. Now, you'd think your very first car would be something special, something original. But the Model AA was basically a copy of an American car called the Chrysler Airflow. That's already a bit of a shaky start, right? Toyota borrowed so heavily from Chrysler's design that the Model AA had almost zero originality of its own. And here's the thing: copying doesn't always mean you copy the good stuff. The Airflow itself wasn't a particularly amazing car, and Toyota's version had all the same problems, plus a few extra ones they added themselves. The engine was a 3.4-liter unit, which sounds decent on paper, but the power delivery was rough and uneven, not a smooth ride at all. The brakes were old-fashioned drum brakes that struggled at higher speeds, making the car feel unsafe. Build quality was shaky too, because Toyota was still learning how to manufacture at scale. And if anything broke down, good luck finding spare parts or a mechanic who knew how to fix it in 1930s Japan. Still, this car mattered. It was Toyota's first step, and even though it stumbled, it gave them the experience they desperately needed. Number 4, 1947 Toyota. Say fast forward a decade to 1947. Japan had just come out of World War II, and resources were incredibly tight. Toyota released the SA, a small, compact car meant to get ordinary Japanese people moving again. The idea was great. The execution, not so much. The SA had a tiny engine producing only about 27 horsepower. For context, a modern hatchback makes around 100 horsepower or more. 27 horsepower meant the SA was painfully slow, and if you put any real load in the car, luggage, passengers, or drove up any kind of hill, it would struggle badly. Then there was the cooling system. The SA used an air-cooled engine, which sounds fancy but actually means there was no water-based cooling system protecting the engine from heat. In warm weather, which, if you're in Australia, is basically half the year the engine would overheat, Not ideal. The suspension was stiff and basic, so on rough or unsealed roads, the ride was bumpy and uncomfortable. The cabin was tiny, cramped, and offered almost no features, no heater, no radio, nothing extra. And on longer drives, the SA simply wasn't reliable enough to trust. Even in tough post-war times, people found better options. The SA quietly faded away, but it pushed Toyota to take small car engineering much more seriously. Every failure taught Toyota something that no classroom ever could. Number 3. 1955, Toyota crowned early models. By the mid-1950s, Toyota was getting ambitious. They decided to take on the United States, the biggest car market in the world. In 1957, they shipped the Toyota Crown to America with high hopes. It did not go well. American highways are long, wide, and fast. Drivers out there cruise at 100 kilometers per hour for hours at a time. The Crown's engine wasn't built for that. It was underpowered and slow to accelerate, which frustrated American drivers used to much more powerful cars. Worse, on those long highway stretches, the engine would overheat. Heat management was a serious weak point in the early Crown. The transmission also had issues, gear shifts were rough and sometimes unreliable, and early export models started showing rust and wear problems sooner than expected, which is pretty much the worst possible advertisement for a brand trying to build a reputation for quality. Toyota pulled the Crown from the US market and went back to the drawing board. But this failure was actually a turning point. It lit a fire under Toyota's engineers to build something that could genuinely compete internationally. And a few years later, they came back with the Corona, and this time they were ready. Number 2. 1961 Toyota Publica. Alright, let's talk about the Toyota Publica. The name comes from public because this was meant to be the car for everyone. A cheap, practical little runabout for everyday Japanese families. But there's cheap and cheerful, and then there's just cheap. The Publica had a tiny 700cc engine. Yes, 700cc, which meant acceleration was almost non-existent. Merging onto a motorway in a Publica would have been genuinely terrifying. To keep costs down, Toyota stripped out basically every comfort feature. No heater, no radio, hard seats, stiff suspension that made every bump feel like hitting a speed hump at full speed, and the engine noise, because the cabin had so little insulation. The sound of that little engine rattling away came straight through into the passenger compartment. Long drives in the Publica were exhausting, noisy, and uncomfortable. The Publica sold okay to buyers who had absolutely no other option, but it never caught on with the general public the way Toyota hoped. It taught them something important. Budget cars still need to feel human. You can save money on fancy features, but if a car is unpleasant to actually sit in and drive, people will find something else. Number 1. 1960 Toyota Corona early models last up the early 1960s Toyota Corona. And look, the Corona eventually became one of Toyota's greatest success stories. But the early versions, they had some serious issues to work through first. The engines wore out faster than they should have. For a car that people were buying as a practical, reliable, everyday vehicle, that was a big problem. The cooling system was again a weak point. Overheating was a regular complaint, especially in warmer climates. The handling at higher speeds wasn't great either, with stability becoming uncertain when drivers pushed the car. And perhaps most damaging, build quality was inconsistent. To Coronas built in the same factory around the same time might feel completely different from each other. That kind of unreliability kills consumer trust fast. Adding to the pressure, Nissan's Bluebird was competing directly with the Corona. And in those early years, the Bluebird was frankly the better car. Toyota was losing customers to a rival, which is never a comfortable position to be in. But Toyota took every single one of those complaints seriously. They redesigned, retested, and refined the Corona until it became genuinely excellent, and eventually, it helped Toyota build the global reputation they carry to this day.